welcome back to the show. I'm here with Sky Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. You're wearing gray.
I am, as are you.
That's good. Why do you always have to point that out? Why do you always have to point out that I'm as color limited as you are?
You know, it's that log and speck thing that Jesus talks about.
Oh, and so it's a sermon illustration.
Right.
Okay. And Christian Taylor.
Hey.
Who is groovy and green.
Groovy and green. Bill wondered what you were going to say. I tried to mix it up today.
Pretty bright.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
like the necklace.
thank you. My husband took me shopping for Mother's Day
Really?
He did.
Where?
at Jeans and a Cute Top Shop in
Oh,
Wheaton,
downtown
Illinois.
Wheaton,
Yeah.
Illinois.
It was quite a fun experience. The woman there said she'd never seen a man be so patient for 2.5 hours while his wife
2.5 hours? It's not a big store.
I know.
store?
In that store. 2.5 hours. And he wanted to find a beautiful necklace
I would
for
have
me.
passed out.
That store's like the size of this set.
It is the size of the set. You are exactly
I would
right.
have passed out.
2.5 hours.
Do
I
they
tried
have a,
just
do they have a man seat there?
Yes, they do.
A
A
husband
couch,
chair?
and he sat there, and he actually picked out things
Man
for
seat
me.
is a toilet. I don't
That's
think
true,
That's
yeah.
what they have.
Right.
Thinking of something else.
There's this other
A man
little
couch.
boutique store in downtown Wheaton. I don't know what it's called, but the owners there have a couple of bulldogs that they always keep in the store.
Yes.
And my kids always go in there, and it's the
What
nicest
is
dog.
it?
Yeah.
It's right next.
It's a home.
Oh, Home Again.
It's,
No.
No, it's a.
It's a boutique
decor.
place that has all kinds of weird stuff in
Oh.
it.
Can I do the theme song?
Go
now?
ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky
Hi, Phil. Sorry, my soda came up.
and Christian too.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Christian.
No soda for me.
And we've got a guest. Yes, a guest here for you.
Woohoo!
Well, we won't tell you who it is yet, but it's a relative of another guest that we've had. So while I finish the song, you can try to figure that out. Hey, it's a podcast. It's Lend an ear. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here. The Phil Fisher podcast starts right here.
People are going to think we have another Gunger.
Another Gunger?
Another Gunger.
Oh, my brother's Gunger is my Gunger too. Remember that song from
No.
Sesame Street? Oh, my brother's mother is my mother too, and my other brother's mother is my mother too. And if I had another brother, he could call my mother mother, but she would still be my mother too. It was about, sibling anxiety, that if I have a little brother, does it mean my mother is still my mother?
It must have really impacted you. Because honestly, I watched Sesame Street forever, and I don't
You don't know
recall
that
that at
song?
all.
Ladybug
No,
Picnic?
I
You know
remember
Ladybug Picnic?
one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
One of these things just doesn't belong.
Yeah, Ladybug Picnic. 1, 2, 3,
Oh, yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
9,
10, 11, 12. Ladybugs at the Ladybug Picnic.
I remember that one.
I didn't watch Sesame Street
Guy,
that much.
No?
It was too educational.
Wow.
I struggled in school.
Wow, that's good. Of course, you were a younger generation where you had more non-educational options.
I
We
did.
didn't really have as many
No.
daily. There weren't daily
No.
options.
It was
Right.
Sesame Street, The Electric Company, and Mr. Rogers.
Neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
We had Reading Rainbow and all that, but
Electric Company. And then when Zoom.
Zoom. Oh, do you know I still
Gonna
know
zoom,
Boston,
zoom,
Mass.
Zoom, zoom. We're gonna
02134.
zoom. Come on, give it a try. We're gonna show you just why. We're gonna teach you to fly. Hi. They never taught me to fly. I
Okay.
never left.
Send
the
it to
ground.
Zoom.
What?
02134. Send it to Zoom.
Boston, Mass. 02134. You don't remember that?
none, no.
No.
Mm-mm. Nothing.
Younger generation.
Do you
guys
remember?
any of that?
Do you remember Schoolhouse Rock?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they did have that
I
one.
still show those to my kids.
I'm just a Bill,
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
lonely old Bill.
Yeah, I-
And I'm
Conjunction
sitting
Junction.
here on Capitol Hill. Yeah.
My daughter likes a song, and I forget who sings it. It's a currently popular song, but it sounds just like the noun. You know, they're nouns. A noun's a special kind of word. It's anything you ever heard. A noun is quite interesting. It's a song by the Pentatonics.
Oh.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's they probably don't even know, but they ripped off the noun song from Schoolhouse Rock. So whenever she's singing it, I finish it with Schoolhouse Rock, which really annoys her.
Well, that was an interesting little tangent.
Yeah, what
What are we talking
I
about?
don't know.
So something. Did you hear what happened in Waco?
I did.
I did not.
You did not hear what happened in Waco?
Do we really need to talk about Texas again?
This is bizarre. This is really bizarre.
Well, we're not talking about Texas. We're talking about something
Well, we
bizarre
have a
that happened in
guest.
Texas.
We're talking about current
It
events.
seems
Okay.
to happen a lot.
This is that does not happen a lot.
Well, Texas. I'm saying Texas comes up in
happens.
this show
Texas
a lot.
is big.
You're defending Texas.
There's a
now.
lot.
I'm trying to be sensitive to our viewers who are,
Are Texans?
Some of them.
Okay, this is unusual. Okay.
All right.
It isn't usual for Texas, is what you're saying.
No, I don't even think this is normal in Texas, except for in a movie version of Texas that would have Pee Wee Herman in the middle of it.
But it's another shooting story,
Yeah.
which is the last Texas story we did also.
well, we can talk about Chicago then
Well,
if we want to talk about
we have
shooting.
shootings, but not this
It's like
interesting.
20 in one weekend this weekend.
So okay,
Yeah.
a Twin Peaks restaurant, 5 biker gangs are having a meeting.
Okay.
They
That's
take
probably
over the
like
restaurant.
50 people.
This sounds just like what happened
100
in
people.
Ron Burgundy, the Anchorman show. Remember?
And Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
5
Okay.
biker gangs have a meeting. 2 guys or 3 guys or 4 guys start getting into it in the restroom, pull knives, eventually pull guns. There's a shootout in the restaurant. 9 bikers are killed.
Oh, gosh.
9 bikers are killed. 18 are wounded. Like scads of police have to be called in because they arrested 120.
I thought it was 192 somewhere. I saw that
Okay,
number.
something like that. Bikers
Wow.
are arrested.
I was a silly restaurant owner for even letting them be there.
That's been part of the story.
Yeah, apparently, the police knew this was going to go down.
But he was not very cooperative. The owner of the restaurant was not very cooperative with the police. And so the chain, it's a chain, it's a franchise. They just opened one in Cantera right by us
Called?
in Warrenville, Twin Peaks.
Isn't it like the TV show?
No.
I would hope
it's-
not.
Do you know what Twin Peaks
Do they
is?
have little people that walk backwards and talk funny?
No. Do you know what?
Oh, I
Think of
get it. It's a
Hooters.
restaurant.
Think of Hooters.
Stop it.
You know what Hooters is?
They're called restaurants.
Yes. It's Twin
It's
There
true.
is a real name.
Yes, there's a
Like
whole. I read an article about this.
Twisted Kilt? Tilted
Tilted Kilt.
They were talking about how
Twisted Sister.
during
That's a different restaurant.
during the recession, the restaurant industry was really in decline, except for restaurants. They were still growing. That's the whole category of.
Mostly because of implants.
I was about to say that. You beat me to it.
I didn't want to go there. So okay, now I understand what Twin Peaks is. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
This is an adult podcast, in case you're wondering.
And Twin Peaks was started by a guy who I believe worked at Hooters and thought it was too tame. Thought, you know what? Hooters is like from the 80s. People were more conservative in the 80s. We can probably push this further. We can crank it up a notch. And that's Twin Peaks. And now we have one right outside Wheaton.
I'm disgusted. I feel dirty
Okay,
just hearing this news.
But that's coincidental to the story, though, right?
It
has nothing.
is and it isn't. It is.
Are you saying restaurants are inherently violent?
Okay, this is what I think.
What
is
are you
interesting.
saying?
I mean, there's obviously a tragic element, but it's also just weird to think about how many movies have you seen with biker gangs getting into fights, and ending up with a shootout in a restaurant.
Well, usually it's in some dive bar
Yes.
in some backwood
Yes,
country
this
thing.
is in a strip mall in Waco, Texas.
in a restaurant.
in a franchise restaurant. But still, there's just something cartoonish about it. That because it's happened in a zillion Robert Rodriguez movies and all sorts of movies where we're gonna smash this joint up. This is it. You better call the cops.
So what-
And it actually happened.
Why were the 5 biker gangs there?
They were having a meeting
About
Like a summit.
what?
A summit.
Their turf. Turf.
It was turf.
Turf. It's funny because in Chicago, gangs look different than in Texas, apparently. Because they're all white guys, many of them middle-aged, some of them with gray beards and bald heads, but then all wearing the same leather vests with the name of their gang on the back.
And carrying knives and
It was
guns.
So
like a
like half these
musical.
guys probably have 401k retirement
I don't know,
plans.
but now they're
and-
all arrested. But they also sell marijuana. They're in drug trafficking.
So they're entrepreneurs.
They're entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
as is the owner of the restaurant, is an entrepreneur. Okay, so here's why this struck me.
All right, can't wait.
Because this scene, bikers, everyone who
Bikers in a restaurant.
bikers in a
Go
restaurant
bonkers.
represent.
That's my headline.
I hear you, buddy. Buddy wants my attention, but this is important.
He needs
This is
both
about
his
our-
hands,
our
buddy.
Culture. My dog is here today. It represents the caricatures that gender is has become or can become in America. Even while we're trying to say, on one hand, there's no such thing as gender anymore. We're beyond gender. Men and women are interchangeable. There's no differences. But then you look at this storyline and you have two groups of people involved in this story. One are shooting and knifing and getting arrested, and they're 100% male. The other...
Do you know that?
Yeah.
There's no women in these gangs?
Well, not in any of the pictures of all the guys lined up getting arrested. Maybe they have women, but they're not in any of the pictures, and there's a lot of pictures of the guys getting arrested. The other group are getting paid to not wear clothing, very much clothing, and to flirt with men.
So what you're saying is the world hasn't really changed all that much.
I'm saying it's like 1880 in the Wild West, where you had saloons filled with, harlots and cowboys. It's like the exact same thing.
So you're saying Texas is like the 1880s still?
No, he is not saying that. And he gave a disclaimer
Okay.
in the beginning saying this is not about Texas.
So-
Would you quit trying to
I'm not.
get him
Okay,
in
but
trouble?
I have-
He has enough trouble of his own
trying to
without you
ruin
trying
it.
to
I wanna
drag
say
him
something
in.
We
that
have something good going here,
I want to
Sky,
say something
and you
that
just wanna
actually
ruin it.
reinforces what you're saying.
Okay.
So two media things occurred in my life recently. One is I saw the new Avengers movie.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
saw that too.
Yeah, and then last night I watched the series finale of Mad Men.
Oh.
Okay, so there's two kind of, and it was interesting because I was reading responses online to both of those things in the last few weeks, and people are angry
Yeah.
because in both of those shows, and I don't want to ruin anything for Mad Men fans, but like in the Avengers, Black Widow is seen as almost this feminist figurehead, right? Because she's this strong woman who's
Right.
independent and
Right.
kills guys and all that. And people are upset in the Avengers because they gave her a love interest storyline. And
The backstory.
the backstory is that when she was being trained as an assassin in the Soviet Union, I think they sterilized her so she cannot have any children, and she's kind of upset about that.
So that you're not distracted
Right.
from your mission.
You're going to have to put a spoiler alert up when you put this up because you're giving
Okay.
away.
Yeah.
It's on $1 billion. Everyone's seen it already.
Okay.
And I won't give away spoilers in this, but in the Mad Men finale, one of the female characters, who's also seen as sort of a feminist icon, and that show takes place during the '60s, and it shows the progression of women from being completely background subjugated people in this office to actually coming into their own and having a degree of success. I mean, well, one of the women in the show ends up. Again, it's a love interest. She has a relationship with a man. At the end, a lot of people thought this was great because they wanted them to get together and all that. But some people online are upset because they think that diminishes her status as a feminist character, the fact that she even wanted.
She still has a desire
Yeah.
for male companionship.
So it's interesting that now we're in this weird tension where you can't show women with multiple facets. Because if you show any facet that looks at all like traditional womanhood, you get in trouble.
Because we so often show men with one facet. You are the hero,
Yeah.
Lone Ranger. You don't see much about his family life.
Yeah, but that was then. I'm talking about, like, even now in Mad Men, the main character is Don Draper, and he's a disaster. I mean, he does some things
Yeah.
really well, but he's also relationally completely,
Tony Stark, career and heroics.
Yeah, but you see him in some of the movies also kind of talking, he's a tormented soul internally, and he's got weaknesses. So I just don't get how
But
some of
women-
these commentators want these women to be portrayed as one-dimensional, strong career women, period. And if you show other dimensions to their character,
Right.
including anything that could be categorized as traditionally feminine, then people flip out. And it's
Right.
like, really? Is that where we are now? You can't. So I just
Well,
think
I think it's interesting. What I'm hearing you're saying is that while
What are you hearing?
what I'm
Tell me
hearing
what you're
is you're saying that even though things may look different and we may wear different clothes and we
yeah.
may drive different things instead of horses, it's motorcycles, we at our essence are still playing out our same roles that we
We're
did
still-
100 years
We
ago.
still seem to follow some genetic programming of, I'm a guy, I want to smash.
Right. And you're saying
And I'm
that
a girl, I want to be beautiful. I want to attract.
right. And I'll be willing to give away
And I'll,
whatever.
yeah.
Is he going to type on your? That's what it looks like. He's
Buddy-
playing with your mouse.
But he has his head down on my laptop, so I,
have
can't
to
do any more
I'm sorry, but I
stories.
have to take a picture.
he's a
of this.
laptop dog.
No more stories. That's funny. I also watched last night. I tweeted about this. I was going through email and looking for something to watch while I was going through email, and happened upon the Billboard Music Awards. I don't know if you watched any of the, and so I tweeted about it and said, if you're struggling to tell the male artists from the female artists, just keep in mind the male artists are the ones allowed to wear clothes.
It was that risque, huh?
That's very funny, Phil.
Thanks, Guy. But it struck me. Here's what struck me. Because Rihanna performed, and this girl performed, and that girl performed, and all these girls performed. Thank you, buddy. And they're all, how sexy can I be? Because that's how you measure. And even the girls in the audience. It was like what's her name? The country girl that's the biggest star.
Taylor Swift?
Yeah, Taylor Swift is there. And I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years that her outfits are getting more and more like everyone else's outfits, and less like the sweet little country girl, that she started out. So it's even having an effect on her. But then there were two, I forget who it was. There was a guy and a girl that were announcers that were kind of co-hosts of one part of it. And I was just noticing that the girl, and this was a lot of the artists, it's hip right now to wear like sheer cat suits with things glued to them in strategic places.
We're getting a glimpse into Phil's obsession with fashion here, which...
You know what? It just dawned on me. Really,
Yes.
what you are is you're an observational humorist.
Mark Twain.
You are very much.
I'm Mark Twain.
That's
like
okay.
that.
Guy. See, that's how you should be looking
I
at
don't
it.
recall Mark Twain being that preoccupied with people's fashion.
No, but he was
No,
preoccupied with everything
Here's
that was
what I
going
noticed.
on
I
around
was
him.
staring at this, and it was a woman who maybe 30% of her skin was covered by things that probably had to be held in place with glue.
Adhesive.
Actually, it's
Tape.
yeah,
Okay, tape.
double-sided sticky tape.
And it was a man wearing a full suit,
Yeah.
tie, everything.
Right.
And it occurred to me 50 years ago, he would be wearing the exact same thing.
Yeah,
She would not be wearing anything near that.
right.
So that's how much change. I'm just thinking about 50 years of what is acceptable or expected. It's even expected. And then my next tweet was, wait a minute, Kelly Clarkson just came on, and she's allowed to wear clothes. Because she was fully covered, because she's overweight.
Is she?
yeah.
I haven't seen a picture of her
Did
since
she have a
American
child
Idol.
or something? I mean, her body style has changed,
don't
and I
know.
am wondering.
So if let's say there's a female artist who
She has a
Yeah.
child.
who,
That's
who,
what I thought.
who's in phenomenal physical form,
Yes.
but chose to wear normal coverage clothing, right?
Yeah.
Would that be so out of sync now that she might actually get attention because she's dressing?
I don't know. Well, people would wonder what the deal was.
what I think is so
Must be
con-
But with everyone being half naked,
Must
how do you
be a
get attention
Christian.
anymore? Why don't you go the opposite?
You push it further.
No, but that's
Push
what I
it
mean, is you
further.
well, what I think
Further.
is so
You can't go back. There's no going back,
the word?
Sky. There's no going
what's
back.
so
gonna-
contradictory is how women want to be seen
Objectified.
as no, they want to be seen as liberated, and they want to
Liberated
be
and objectified.
and liberated and sort of not seen as a sex object, but and seen more for their brains and more for their abilities. But at the same time, we have allowed ourselves as women to be drawn into this phenomena of less is more.
I know.
And
Drive
as far as
around
our
your
clothes-
town
Phil.
and see in the summertime and see how many girls under the age of 25 are not wearing yoga pants.
Well, I'll tell you what's worse than yoga pants.
What?
Are these
Not yoga pants.
and these shorts
Oh,
that
yeah.
might as well be just basically underwear. And I don't understand. What do
I
we
find
do about
those
this?
really comfortable.
Like I keep saying, if I was a dad,
Yeah.
if I was, and you are.
Yeah.
If I was a dad,
Yeah, and
I
I
would
am.
not let my daughter walk out of the house
I know.
in those clothes. But what do you do?
Did you see that video that went viral maybe a year or two ago about the dad who decided to wear the short shorts? No. Because he's arguing with his teenage daughter all the time about what she was wearing. So he said, fine. And he decided to wear the exact same thing she's wearing. And it's hysterical.
Oh, I totally want to
And
see that.
those really short cut off like Daisy Duke kind of
Yeah.
shorts. And he's a middle-aged dad body kind of guy, and it's just horrible, but it's hysterical. And he totally shamed his daughter because now he's all over the internet with it. And
But why? What do we do, Phil? What do we do? How do we change
Phil,
this?
women need you, Phil. Can you please advise them?
I know, it's true. I did notice that I think all of the retweets that my tweets got last night were from women. So, it was.
So they're looking to you to lead them.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think I should run for president of the women. Is that
Now, the
an
National
official
Organization
thing?
of
Is that a
Women.
thing?
Yeah, there's a National Organization of Women.
National Organization of Christian Women.
And I don't know why they're not standing up demanding that
not
women wear more
cool.
clothes. They should. They should be the
'Cause-
ones championing this issue.
Who should?
Women, don't take all your clothes off all the time. You should
but you
have
know
more
what?
self-dignity.
If Phil's the guy always talking about fashion, I'm the one always talking about economics. And it's as old as history itself. Sex sells.
That's true.
And these women artists know that if they present
So,
themselves as a
okay.
sex symbol, it gets attention and
Right.
it sells.
So I'm looking at
and
the
they make
host
money.
and the hostess. Is it correct to say that anymore, or is it just two hosts?
I
Can
believe
we
they're
no
just
longer-
It's like they're not stewardesses, they're flight attendants.
But can we not longer? Oh! Did you notice this?
Uh-oh.
What's the theme song for Ace Hardware?
I don't know.
Ace Hardware.
What is it?
Ace is a place with a helpful
Helpful
hardware,
hardware,
man. Remember that?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Folks.
Ace is a place with a helpful hardware, folks.
You know what? I go to
Most
Ace somewhat
awkward-
regularly, and almost
Boy,
everyone
that
there's a
just-
woman.
Just flows off the tongue, folks.
At least you
What-
didn't
do
say
you have a better
people.
suggestion?
Well, come up with a new theme song.
We
Write a
can't-
new theme song.
But it's so catchy.
Folks, not when you put folks at the end of it. Okay, back so these two are on stage. The guy who was wearing the exact same thing he could have worn 50 years ago and would have been perfectly acceptable 50 years ago, and the girl who, if she'd worn that 50
half
years
naked.
ago, would have been arrested for public indecency and considered, a harlot. I mean, pick your name, what she would have been considered, because that's the only people that would dress like that. If that's what's happened in 50 years,
Where do we go?
yeah, where do we go from
Well,
here?
it'll be
What's
easy
20 years
because
from
you'll be
here?
able to spot all female celebrities because they'll be completely naked. They'll be like nudists walking around.
I
Oh, she
wonder
must
if
be
at some
famous.
point it circles back
She
around.
must be famous. She has no clothes.
I wonder if it'll circle back around and modesty will become hip.
And in 50 years, Beyonce in a burqa? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
If you can make a burqa, if you can dance in a burqa, I think you've...
But would anyone know you're
Jeremy
dancing?
said to me something the other day. We went walking around Naperville, actually, and we were in these stores. And he said, 30 years ago when I was, sneaking into a...
This is your husband?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I shouldn't say this, but anyway.
Sneaking into... Tune in next week, folks, to hear why we had to bail Jeremy out of prison.
Well, no. Sneaking into stores to peek at things in magazines. He goes, now they're pasted in window fronts.
Oh, right,
basically
right.
what I used to sneak around to try and
Right.
see is what's, everywhere for everybody to see all the time. That's
Right.
the difference.
And it's because, you know why this is?
Please tell us. Economics.
Economics is a driver, but also the rejection of Christian sexual morality as something from the past that we needed to move on from. We put a blanket labeled Christian morality as repressive.
Well, I would nuance that a little bit.
No, you will not. I am painting with a broad brush, and I am proud of it.
Okay.
Okay, nuance it.
I agree with you. I just
No, you
so
don't.
I think there were a couple things going on simultaneously. One is traditional Christianity was seen as subjugating women.
Yes.
So it had to be pushed aside, and with that came a marginalization of traditional sex roles or gender roles. And so when you throw all that away, you get two things. One, you do get liberated women who can move beyond their traditional roles in society,
Yes.
which most of us would say is a good thing.
Good thing.
But then combined with that, you get this this free love society, the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s, which then, as we now see 30, 40 years later, has resubjugated women in a new way. So you throw out the good, you throw out the bad.
So what we learn is that women will always be subjugated?
That will always be the tendency of a male
Unless.
culture.
Unless. I have one other thing to say.
Okay,
I read
what's
this
that?
amazing devotional this morning, which actually is right in line
Was
with
it
what you're
from
saying.
Sky Jitani?
It may have been. It's whoever writes With God Daily Devotional.
that's
Was that
Sky
Sky
Jitani.
Jitani? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Better ring the bell again.
if women,
But I don't write any of the typos or misspellings, just so you know.
Oh, really? Is that your dog?
Yeah.
do you write this on your iPhone or something?
Do you dictate to your dog, Alfie?
No.
And he types. Okay.
He types poorly?
Can I get back
Yeah,
to my
yeah.
point? Okay,
Give it to
so
us.
so basically, I think that if women were to internalize this message, things might turn around. Let me lay it on you. A few years ago, Louis Giglio told 60,000 young people at the Passion Conference, "The only thing I'm afraid of is living an insignificant life." There is a fear many of us, young and old, can relate to. That is a fear many of us can relate to. In our social media-driven exhibitionist culture, however, we've come to define significance as merely being noticed. With each new Facebook friend or Twitter follower, we are gaining another witness to our lives, another person to notice us, and thereby add another particle of validation to our existence. Each retweet or like brings an ephemeral, is that the right word? Happiness because someone is
passing.
telling us you matter. Your life is being noticed, and maybe we think, maybe, just maybe, I am significant. And at the end of the day, that's truly what we're looking for. It's,
Right.
we're looking for significance. And I think...
And approval.
And
we want to
approval.
matter.
We want to be beautiful.
Yeah.
We want
wanna
people to
fit in.
think...
We want to fit in, which is why Taylor Swift's clothes are evolving towards Rihanna's right before our eyes.
But
Yeah,
there's a solution here.
Why don't you fit in some more clothes?
There is?
Yep.
Is that the solution?
No.
More clothes?
Christ is calling us, his followers, to pray in secret and to nurture our relationship with him.
Yeah.
Our value does not come from our followers, but our Heavenly Father. And so we should resist the temptation to display our life and our body for everyone to see. If you find the instant gratification of social media particularly powerful, turn it off for a while. Instead, rest in knowing that your secret life of communion with God is where your true significance is hidden.
Wow. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
Ding it again.
And if you are not getting the With God Daily devotional, you totally should sign up.
I just need to take Christian around everywhere I go.
I do think that it makes you wonder whether, as parents, we will, going forward, need to be more protective. Because back in the 70s and 80s, there was such a sense that the country was going the wrong way from the Christian way that parents got very protective, and that's where the bubble came from, and the subculture and Christian music and Christian
Right.
radio.
We all
and
decided
Christian
we wanted to
publishing.
hide and
Yes, and so
protect.
I kind of grew up in that
So did I.
bubble and listened to only Christian music. And then we all kind of decided, well, that was kind of backwards. That was kind of dorky. We're supposed to be in the world, not of the
Right.
world, in the world. And so we've been kind of breaking apart the bubble. But as we do that, I don't see it being done with much nuance. And I see a lot of Christian kids that they're watching American Idol, they're watching The Voice, they're watching, they're watching MTV Awards. And so they're just kind of, we've gone from drinking nothing from the fire hose of culture to just fully engaging the fire hose of culture, and being overwhelmed by it.
Well, and I think there's such an incredible, where do you stop? Like in the future, are we going to have to be more protective? Well, I myself have tried. I
Yeah.
tried,
Yeah.
I have all their Facebook and Twitter passwords. I don't let them on Instagram or
I think
Snapchat.
we got to go full Amish.
But then you have all these apps and
Full on.
exposure.
Not
How
anymore.
are we going
Not
to do
if you're
that?
Amish.
I think
No electricity.
the lid is off Pandora's box.
The genie's out of the
The
bottle.
genie is out of the
And
bottle.
the genie is wearing no clothes.
It is no clothes. I don't know what you
Sky.
do.
I
Save us from the sky.
I have 2 daughters and 1 son, and just from this
Yeah.
conversation, here's how I'm going to define success as a father.
Okay.
Neither of my daughters work at Twin Peaks, and my son does not become part of a biker gang.
Way to put a button on
What
it.
if
Sky.
I end up living in Texas?
That's acceptable.
Okay. Texas, okay. Certain parts of the Texas subculture.
They can avoid.
You know what? That
Not
subculture
okay.
is everywhere.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not just
All right,
Texas.
we have a guest. We do have a guest. Curious to hear your thoughts about that whole that I just brought up. You can post it online on our Facebook page, or you can email it to skyjatani@skyjatani.com. That's not your email address.
No, it's not.
No. Anyway.
But you can contact me from skyjatani.com via that website.
Yeah.
So.
We have a guest. We'll be right back with Jim Walton. Okay, we're back with Jim Walton. Not to be confused with John Walton, Dr. John Walton.
Please, not.
So,
You look like a more laid back version
You
of John
look-
Walton.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
you look
you.
like
Al.
John
Thank-
Walton raised in the Bay Area
Yeah.
in a Volkswagen bus.
Yep. He was
Right.
even just playing his iPhone guitar.
I
which
know,
lends
it's
itself
very
to
impressive.
that.
So John Walton, Dr. John Walton, who's been on the show numerous times, said, my brother's going to be in town. You should have him on the podcast.
Was he just trying to get rid of you for a few hours, or what was that about?
You got it.
Yeah.
Anything will do.
And I said, does he do something? What would we be talking about? And he said, no, he's got this ministry, and he's worked with kids for years and years and years and years, and so there's something to talk about. So, Jim Walton, you are from, where did you guys grow up? Where's the Walton family?
We grew up
farm?
in northwest of Philadelphia in a suburb called Norristown,
Okay.
out near King of Prussia, Valley Forge.
Okay.
Northwest
okay.
of
And
Philly.
your parents were what did
People.
what'd your
A
parents
man and a woman.
do? Your dad did.
My dad worked for AT&T and Bell Telephone,
Okay.
and then AT&T, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
And you are also a Wheaton College alum.
Yes, I am.
So you're
As
kind
is
of
your wife
As is my wife.
and your brother teaches.
Who's in our
there.
studio audience today?
Mutual clapping. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So, did you hear about the Waco, Texas incident?
I did hear about it, but I didn't know all those fruitful details that you brought out.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad you were here, so you can go back. You're now in Buffalo, New York.
Right. Now
Or
we're in
outside
Buffalo.
New York.
Right, in a northeast suburb of Buffalo called Amherst, Williamsville.
Okay. And you were you've been a youth pastor.
I've been a youth pastor for 35 years.
That's
After
a long
I
time for a
left
youth
Wheaton,
pastor.
and got my bachelor's there, and then got my master's degree as well
Okay.
At Wheaton?
at Wheaton. And then we were in Massachusetts for about 5 years, and in Rochester, New York for about 6 years, and then in Buffalo, New York for 23 years as youth pastor.
Well, your life as a youth pastor has been incredibly long. Usually it's more like an NFL player, which is like you're in your,
Right.
18 to
Once your
30,
knees
you're
go,
done.
you can't do it anymore.
a couple concussions or some
Right. And
you
some
gotta
chubby
become a
bunny
senior
mistakes,
pastor.
and it's over.
Right. No, youth ministry was all I ever wanted to do. I never
Okay.
wanted to make the jump into senior pastorate. I never wanted to use youth ministry as a jumping point into something else. That's all I wanted to do for my whole life. And so
Okay.
I stuck with it.
So what year did you enter youth ministry, if we can ask?
Yeah, well, full-time youth ministry. Well, I did part-time youth ministry while I was in college.
Okay.
But I graduated college in 76, got my master's in 77. And
That's when you were born, right?
I was
Started-
born in '76.
Yeah.
started youth ministry in 77,
Okay.
full-time. Full-time.
So you've seen the whole progression of youth ministry over the last 30 years.
Very much so,
Yeah.
because...
Do you remember Explo 72?
Of course.
I was there.
You were there?
I was like 4, but I was
Oh,
there.
yeah, we're reminiscing now, aren't we? Yeah, going back to Explo 72. Yeah, Youth Specialty was just getting off the ground with Mike Yaconelli and Wayne Rice. They were just printing their first ideas books and
4 spiritual laws.
creating youth specialties, right? Bill Bright had done the 4 spiritual laws, and all that was just happening at the time. The Jesus People movement had happened in the late 60s with Larry Norman.
At any point in your life, would you have been labeled a hippie?
No, I
Really?
was a geek and a dweeb.
Okay, geek dweeb.
All right.
Okay.
They turned
Yeah.
out pretty well
Yeah,
overall.
they inherited the earth,
Yeah.
right? The geeks.
Right.
Bill
According to
Bill
Bill
Gates pretty
Gates.
much owns it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And so watching the changes in youth ministry from 1977 until 2011 when I left youth ministry, of course, in some ways, the adolescence never changes. It's always a time of finding yourself. Eric Erickson, identity development, and it's always that time of breaking away from parents, finding your identity, forming yourself as an individual. But the changes that have happened culturally from 1977 in the youth culture, from what we were then sort of a post-60s, very self-centered,
Right.
to a 2011 ultra
Sorry about that.
self-centered, technologically swallowing environment that has brought
Right,
total changes
right.
to the youth culture.
Well, did they wear clothes back then? Did the women wear clothes back
Well,
then?
actually, when I was in high school, the girls first started trying to wear hot pants to school.
Okay.
But back then the schools had dress codes. For the most part, the girls weren't even allowed to wear blue jeans because there were dress codes. And then well, these weren't blue jeans. They were
Could the boys wear blue jeans?
Short. They were starting to.
But not the girls.
They were starting to, right? And so they started wearing these short shorts.
Just like Paul
and
said.
you'll want to talk about this because I'm talking
Okay.
about girls' fashions.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm being misunderstood.
And of course, they were sent home. You weren't allowed to wear
No
that
hot
kind of
pants.
stuff.
No hot
yeah.
pants. Go-go boots? Go-go
Oh yeah.
boots?
You can't
they
wear
were-
hot go-go boots without hot pants.
Well, you
Right.
could wear them with a miniskirt.
Is that what you
Oh,
did?
or
But they
miniskirt.
sent them
Is
home
that
for
what
that.
you
Right, they could-
taught your boys?
Right.
They sent them home for that too.
No
So all
go-go
that
boots
was
without
just
hot pants.
starting.
Yeah.
Back in the
Right.
well, when I was in junior high and high school back in the late 60s, early 70s is when all that was beginning.
Okay. So you're doing something new now, and I don't want to spend all our time reminiscing because you're doing something new. It's called The Third Choice,
Right, the third choice.
thirdchoice.org,
Yes.
and it's the number 3 RD,
Right.
Third Choice, not spelled out.
Correct.
Right. And if you spell it out, you won't find it.
Right.
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 Because we don't have the
www.thethirdchoice.org.
funding
but
to
it's-
buy every possible.
So what are the
Domains
first two
surrounding
choices?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a
Just
good
go
question,
with
but I haven't
the
even explained what the
3 RD.
ministry is.
I know.
yet.
I figured we'd build to that.
Okay, it's an apologetics ministry, and as far as a lot of the atheists and non-Christians in our country are concerned, and a lot of the kids who are leaving the church, they are only perceiving two choices in the world. I can be a Christian and check my brains at the door, or I can be a thinking atheist. And those seem to be the only two choices that they...
So the third choice is Buddhist.
The third choice is an
Thank
atheist
you.
without a brain.
Oh,
Yeah.
a dumb atheist.
The
be an
third
atheist.
choice is that we have a reasonable, rational faith in a God that makes sense in our
Okay.
world and a faith that makes sense out of life.
Okay.
That's the third choice.
Okay. And do you have a
What
background?
a crowd I've got
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Listen, you got to come on here with your armor on, buddy.
We want your A
But
game,
you're
pal.
you should be happy I'm sitting next to you because I'll
Thank
look
you.
out for you.
Oh,
I promise.
thank you. You can be my shield.
Yes, I will be your shield.
Do you have a background in apologetics? Or is
I have 35 years of youth ministry, and that's a background
You've
in
heard them all, right?
apologetics.
I drove my poor youth pastor crazy in high school with all those kinds of questions.
Right,
and-
all the questions you get, and because I started in the late '70s. See, I was on the very cusp when Al Gore invented the internet,
Right.
and we
You were there to
started
see it
doing
happen.
IMing and all the kind of things that we did at the beginning, having to write in all our code and everything when email was first invented, and
So you had like dial-up AOL, you've got mail, all that.
yes.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh,
Those were fun days.
absolutely.
Sending emails to each other in binary.
Absolutely,
Very
but
hard to read.
but I've been answering the questions of teenagers and young people and college students and even of the church people for the 35 years I've been in
So
ministry.
how have the questions changed, or have they been the same? Do you get the same ones all the time?
The questions have changed because the culture has become more secular, less grounded and founded in Christianity, and therefore they are more cynical, more skeptical, and in a sense, what they want is they want scientific evidence for everything we believe. Instead of just how can we make sense out of miracles, they want to say, prove to me scientifically that Moses parted the Red Sea. Show me the science.
Okay.
See, and that's a very different aspect than we would have had 10 years ago when there was, the Christian foundation of our country has been falling away for decades now, except now we've come quite to the cliff where it's just falling away by the
So they're coming at things, tell me if this is correct, that they just assume that science is the only legitimate epistemology,
Absolutely.
that there's no other way of knowing truth other than through the scientific method.
And
Right,
is that
that's exactly accurate.
Is that because of prominent atheist voices that have been promoting that idea? Or, is that the effect of big splashes like the God Delusion, and those big books that got everyone's attention? Or is that a slow society-wide creep toward, scientism or positivism?
It's a slow society-like creep that has been accentuated by the blasts,
splashes.
by the big splashes of the books.
But has it been accentuated by certain Christians, even in apologists, apologetics or creationists who themselves are advocating a scientific epistemology for faith. Say, oh yeah, you can prove everything in the Bible with science. So then it backs us into a corner where you only have science as a methodology of communicating.
It does. I mean, you're right about all of these things, and there's another piece of it that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's the creep of Darwinism and naturalism into the universities. My generation from the 60s and 70s, the baby boomers, as they have taken on the professorships in the universities, whereas when we were kids, I'm sure the statistics was very different. But nowadays, if you look at the statistics, it'll tell you that the, even though the atheist population of America is 5% or less, the atheist population of professors is 60% or greater. Professors who will check the atheist box. And so all of this coming into our now instructional bases, where they're just telling the kids, this is the science, and the science says it all, and the science proves the point, and your religion obviously is mythological by comparison.
Right. There's no science behind your religion. So therefore, you must reject it.
Which taps into what my brother John Walton says about Genesis also, where he says we're having the wrong conversation if we're dealing with Genesis as a scientific text, because in the conversations that I have on the website, a lot of students fall away from the faith because of Genesis 1 and 2. Because they say, I know that Genesis 1 and science are at odds with each other. They say they know that. I know that Genesis 1 and science are at odds with each other, and I know that science is true.
So there's your two options.
There's your two options,
Therefore,
but I'm saying, but there's a third choice.
So do you and your brother, are you like the Wonder Twins? You guys go out there and kind of tag team and kind of fight this stuff together?
We have to wear a cape. When we do.
I'm sure that you're not twins. There's an age difference.
No, he's older.
Clearly.
He's clearly older than I am.
Well, can you explain to me, if I was to go to thirdchoice.org, what would I find?
Thethirdchoice.org.
Thethirdchoice.org.
Like, what does it exist to do? Anybody that comes there to have a discussion with you, or what's it about?
The main engine that runs the site is the Q&A forum. Across the top bar, if you click on Q&A forum, it's spelled Q&A forum. If you click on that, it'll take you to the
Q&A forum?
Q&A forum, where you can actually see the categories of questions. And if you click on any of the categories, you can actually see the questions that are there, and you can actually read the dialogues I've had with people. And so it's all archived there, so that anybody can tap into it and read the conversations that have gone before, but anybody can tap into any conversation that's there. If you're reading a conversation, say, I want to know more about this, or I disagree, or I want to tap, there's always a reply button. Anybody can jump into any conversation at any time. But they're all archived there, so a lot of people just go to read because there's so much information there.
Okay, so other discussion forums online, you can get a lot of trolling and really nasty people who aren't genuinely interested in having a dialogue, but just pasting all kinds of. Do you find that to be the case on your site too? Do you have to clean out the people who are just destroying each other with rhetoric, or are the people dialoguing actually interested in conversation?
The people that are dialoguing are mostly interested in conversation. Every once in a while, I get spammed just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I do get a little bit of trolling, but it hasn't been a problem.
That's good. It will be after this, you know.
But I have administrative rights to be able to shut people out. What did you say your name was?
So did you? And are you the only one answering these questions, or do you have a team of people? Or
I'm the one answering the questions. I have other people who help me when I need help. I write to John frequently. My other older brother Bob, who is
they're triplet.
Wait a
the
minute,
Wonder
there's
triplets.
another
he specializes in church history, and he knows everything there
The
is to
Walton,
know
the Walton
about
boys.
church history.
You're like a one-stop shop.
you're even better than the Waltons on like whatever mountain that was.
John does the Old Testament. Na, 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 na. If only I had my guitar with me. And, and then I was involved in ministry all those years and now doing apologetics. So,
Are there any more we don't know about yet?
There are 2 younger siblings. There are 5 of us.
And are they also engaged in any of this fight?
No, my
You need a New Testament scholar.
We do.
You're like Voltron. You guys kind of come together and create some kind of
Power
super-
Rangers.
Yeah.
Wait,
like the Power Rangers.
I got a question because one of your premises, you have a 4-minute promo video
Yes.
that I watched.
Oh, good.
All
Thank
the
you.
way to the end.
Whoa.
4
Thank you.
minutes, Phil.
I know 4 minutes.
It's quite an attention
I
span.
know, and there were no hot pants or anything.
You didn't see the first slide then, did you?
Oh, I missed the first slide. One of your premises is that kids aren't going to church for answers; they're going online for answers.
That's right.
And my question was, do people really go online for answers, or do they go online to argue with people about how right they are? Because at least when you go to the message boards on most places, especially when they deal with religion, there's not a whole lot of honest truth-seeking going on.
Right. They go online for answers primarily.
You're talking about teenagers.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
teenagers and students and 20-somethings and 30-somethings now also.
Well, I got to be
They
honest.
go
and
online
fess up,
for answers.
I do it too.
Yes.
I do it too.
It's very
So-
easy.
I go online for answers about, like, I can't get this oven to turn on.
Well, I do that too. We're
It's-
like the Google generation. Our first
Yeah,
instinct, if
yeah.
we have a question about something, what do
I
we
don't
do?
need the manual, I Google it.
Just Google it.
I pray.
It's
Yeah, right.
it's very
Hey,
easy.
Jesus freak.
Good luck with your oven.
It's very easy to Google for answers.
Yeah.
Whereas a student used to have to go to the library to find out what they needed to know. Now they can just Google the question and get the answer. And in my conversations with people, what I get thrown back at me is obviously Googled answers. Because there's no serious or any kind of deep understanding a lot of times of the question, of the issues, or of the answers. But I can tell they've Googled it. And one of the ways I can tell they've Googled it is because some of them come up with exactly the same Bible text or exactly
Right.
the same wording
Right.
or exactly the same arguments. And I'm thinking, where do people get this? It's because they've Googled the answer. It used to be when
It's the almighty algorithm.
was when somebody was thinking of turning away from Christ, they wouldn't have many places to go with that. If everybody else then they knew in the community were the church kids and their church people at their church, and if they would go to a library, they wouldn't even know where to start. Where do I find an answer to my question about
Right.
is God really immoral? Like, I'm having these thoughts that God is immoral. Where do I go? They wouldn't know where to find that in a library.
right.
They wouldn't know how to find that at school, and they'd almost be afraid to ask. But you can Google that and come up with millions of answers in 0.032 seconds.
And in the past, if they actually did go to somebody with that question, it might be a youth pastor or some, and that youth pastor could say, you know what, you're not the first person to have that question. You should really read C.S. Lewis or whatever, and you could direct them towards something beneficial.
Exactly.
But you're right, with Google now,
Exactly.
it's up for grabs.
So it is up for grabs, and that's where they are going to the internet for answers. Now, after that, then they can go on the internet and they can collaborate with like-minded people. We've read about the internet being that way, that it's forming communities
Right.
that are not geographically based, but that are issue-based or
Ideologically based.
ideologically
Right.
based. And so you can go on a website like reddit.com and you can join a discussion forum that's specifically a collection of ex-Christians or specifically a collection of non-Christians or of ex-Buddhists, and you can find like-minded people who then you can ask, how do I cope with my parents who are still religious? How do I tell them that I don't believe anymore? How do I tell them that I think the Bible is mythological? And they then can dialogue
They
with each
support
other
you.
and have a supportive community.
Right.
Next thing you know, you end up in a biker gang.
In Waco, Texas.
Or
Is that
as
what
a waitress
is-
in Twin Peaks.
Are you trying to create a resource that some of those people could connect with, or are you trying to duplicate that idea but for seekers of Christianity?
Yes.
Both and?
Yes, I want to.
And how would the folks on Reddit know that you exist?
They
What's
don't.
your marketing strategy?
They don't. Well, I have to do SEO, search engine optimization,
Yes.
just like everybody else does. The problem is that everybody's doing SEO and everybody's vying for Google's first page. And so Not everybody can be on Google's first page.
This is true.
But that's my best shot where through SEO and through the physical distribution of cards and through various things like speaking opportunities and podcasts that I may be on occasion, that people hear about the third choice and can dialogue with me. Because my whole thing is not publishing a blog for people to read. It's talk to me, and I will
dialogue.
talk back to you. And that makes a difference for much of the Christian presence that's on the internet. Even there are websites like gotquestions.org,
Hey.
Hey, he's catching on.
Yeah.
even like
Taking over the show.
like that where you can ask a question and they will give you an answer, but then it stops there.
Right.
There's no continuing dialogue.
Right.
And I think that's what people need for
Right.
there to be really personal apologetics, effective evangelism, and worthwhile discipleship. It has to
Okay.
be built on dialogue.
What can we do to help our audience? We got like 10,000 people out there, give or take.
Really?
Yeah, listening.
People
to
will actually
Right.
listen to this.
Now, what can they do to help another Walton?
To help another Walton. Well, obviously, my thing would be to say use the website and refer other people to it, because I think it's a good resource for Christian people. I think it's a good place for Christians to dialogue. I think it's an excellent place for non-Christians to dialogue, to ask their questions, and to really thoughtfully have a thoughtful conversation with somebody about the things of God. So that's one thing you can do about that. The other thing is to get trained in apologetics, because, and I don't think apologetics is just defending our faith. People think, well, you're trying to defend God. No, I'm not trying to defend God. God doesn't need to be defended. But there's a treasure that is Jesus Christ, and I know that treasure is real. Now, to me, that's what apologetics is explaining the reality of the treasure. But the answers, the questions that are being asked are different than the questions that were being asked 20 or 30 years ago. And the answers that we give have to be different than the answers that we gave 20 or 30 years ago.
Right.
But the problem is too much of the church is still mentally back there, so that they're engaging on a level where the questions are not being asked, and they're giving answers that don't mean anything anymore. For instance, the generations now, there's very little respect for the Bible. And so you can't say, well, the Bible says. As soon as you say that,
They're
you've
gone.
lost your
Right.
dialogue. They don't care what the Bible says.
So if people read the dialogues you've had on your website, is that a form of training? Is they mimic essentially the way you've responded to those questions, they're learning how to do it themselves?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because all of the conversations are archived. People can read that and go, oh, so that's how you answer that, or that's what some of the answer is.
So before we wrap up here, in September you've got an event
I do.
that you are doing. What are you guys talking about over there?
Nothing.
Okay.
I was saying you officially paused him. Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
stop, Phil.
In September you're doing an event in Buffalo.
Yes.
Your brother's going to be there.
Yes.
I'm going to be there.
Yes.
Whoa!
What is this event?
Yes.
All the cool kids are doing it.
It's called the Walton Bomb.
Weren't you invited?
No.
Oh,
It's
Apparently,
Buffalo in September.
my
What's not to
invitation got
love?
lost
That's
in the
right.
mail.
Yeah. So tell us
What
about
is
the
it?
event. Who's coming? What's the?
it's a Genesis conference. My brother John is the keynote speaker because he's going to be sharing his ideas about the lost world of Genesis 1 and the lost world of Adam and Eve. Following him is Dr. Craig Evans from up in Nova Scotia, New Testament scholar. He's written about 70 books. He's going to follow John
70.
and talk about how the Second Temple Judaism and the New Testament perfectly align with what John is saying about Genesis. Then Dr. Stephen Schaffner from the Broad Institute in Massachusetts is going to be there. He works with Harvard and MIT.
The Broad Institute.
The Broad Institute.
That's not a restaurant, is it?
No, it's not.
Don't even-
Sorry. Okay.
Don't even.
I just have one question. What the heck are you doing?
I don't know. I really don't.
Right, and Dr. Schaffner's going to talk about the science angle, because if we just talk about about Genesis, well, that doesn't matter. Science is the new God. And so we're bringing Stephen in to talk about genetics and the science angle. And then you have to talk to our pastors and to our church leaders and the Christians who are there and saying, what do we do with all this? Where do we go with this? How do we as Christians respond in a
playing the
meaningful
role of
way?
Christian.
Yeah, you're
to the
playing my
things
role.
that we've
Yeah, the
heard?
so what role, right?
What is this thing called?
The conference?
It's called Genesis Recast.
Called Walton Palooza. Palooza.
Genesis Recast.
Genesis Recast. It's September 18th and
Buffalo?
19th in Buffalo, New York.
Okay. And I have one last question before he keeps playing
Trying
his
to
little
wrap it up.
ukulele.
I'm
I
trying to
know.
wrap it up.
But can you quickly tell us, you said educate yourself in apologetics. I mean, can you give us one or two more sources?
As to some of the books out there.
Sure.
Wow. Yeah, Paul Caban wrote a book called "Is God a Moral Monster?" That's a very common question that I get. John and Debra and Sandy's book about the lost world of Scripture. I get lots of questions about that Scripture is not a reliable source of information. There's a book that's like 150 myths about Christianity. I can't think now who wrote it, but it has, just sort of 2 pages each about all these
I like
myths.
that.
That's an excellent.
150 myths of Christianity?
Something like that, or 147. But yeah, that's the idea.
They
I
couldn't
wish-
get 3 more. and
Yeah,
just round
I
it
just
out?
don't remember.
Give or take.
I don't remember who the author of it is, but that's a very good resource.
Okay.
I really have to wrap up the show now. We're running long.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump in before when you were talking about. So what do we do about as parents?
Can he say that?
No, I can't. No, we gotta wrap
We got to
it
start
up.
doing
Sorry.
podcast extras, the
Yeah, right. And
Overtime.
right.
the assistant editor to put all that together and put it up on the web. All right.
Can I harmonize?
Hey, I'm exalting the brothers we call Walton, 'cause they help the church. They'd never leave us in the lurch, 'cause they've got answers to your questions. And if you'll take a little suggestion, point your browser in the direction of the third choice
Org.
.org. That's 3RD, not THIRD.
Correct.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
See you
Bye,
next
everybody.
time.
Thank
See you guys.